All right, in this episode, we talk about external rotation before front foot strike.
And should pitchers do the push press?
All right, Brent Porcio and Bob Wheatley here at the @TopVelocity hashtag Pitch Tip Show. We go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat @TopVelocity, hashtag Pitch Tips, hashtag Baseball Tips. Ask your question, we answer on the show. We're live here. We just survived a tornado. Showed up in here the other day.
Barely.
Ripped the sign off the gym. But hey, every beautiful day today. Everything's back to normal, and everybody's getting close to season. Bob's out of here next week. David just started spring training. Pretty cool to see. You see those pictures David put on his site? David was out at doing his stretches with I think he had Baptista, and then R.A. Dickey, Stroman were like right next to him. It was pretty cool. So David's having some fun, living the dream, and hey, we're answering questions. So here we go. What's the question for today?
Players Only Incorporated asks, I have a number of kids who are going into external rotation way before foot strike. Any thoughts on correcting this inefficiency?
I want to bring Bob in on this because it's something that, as he's gotten better at this issue, he's thrown harder. So basically what I think you're saying is when these guys hit front foot, they're already into shoulder rotation and going into external rotation. So two things to really fix that, or maybe even more. But initially, if you can get a guy moving a little bit more momentum and speed down the mound, then things are going to want to tend to be late if we have counter rotation. So actually three things. Let's get some momentum down the mound. Let's get counter rotation, meaning as the momentum is moving down the mound, the trunk is counter rotating into that, not over exaggerated, but there is, as the momentum is going down the mound, the shoulders are slightly closing off. And what that's going to do is support if there's also a peak of energy through the hips and shoulder separation. Once we get the hips and shoulders separate, then we can focus on arm cock timing, arm flex timing, and then we want to be as late as possible there. Bob we were talking about this, and I was trying to think of a study. He's asked me, what is a study? Any studies shown the range that a high velocity pitcher's in? Yeah, this one showed that there were about 53 degrees of external rotation. So if this is 0 degrees of external rotation, and that's 90, high velocity pitchers about 53, about halfway through at the moment of front foot strike. Okay, but it doesn't matter if your trunks, if your shoulders are flying open and you're at 53 degrees of external rotation, you're never going to throw the ball. So why guys want to cock early is because their trunks want to go early. My trunk wants to come early. I got to get up because I'm about to throw. So hip shoulder separation is the key, guys, and the key to that is momentum, counter rotation. But Bob can kind of tell you what he personally does in each throw or in his drills to really enhance that.
Yeah, Brent got into the mechanics and the science of it, the specifics of what high velocity pitchers do. I'm going to take more of a broad approach. If I were to compare pictures of me throwing in Little League or even high school, even in college, you would see an earlier arm cocking at front foot, whereas now I'm throwing harder, and I've been able to do that because I've done a better job of separating the two movements, hip to shoulder separation, and the throwing comes later. So I think what I would tell you, what I would advise you to tell your kids is that throwing comes from the legs. And I can tell you that whether I was in college, high school, or Little League, I think my arm was getting cocked so soon because I wanted to throw hard. And in my mind, I thought throwing hard came from the arm. So I started throwing so early because I just wanted to just let it rip and throw so hard, but it wasn't working. Now I'm here, I actually am throwing harder, and I've gotten that jump in ball speed by actually turning my arm off, letting it be later, letting it be more relaxed, because it buys you more time and more range of motion to let your legs work and let your body work.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think, like Bob said, he's still experiencing gains on it. It's something that the better you get at shoulder separation, late arm cocking, counter rotation, the harder you'll throw. Of course, Bob at the same time too enhances his power. So his power production's gone up, his clean's gone up considerably, his vertical jump goes up. So we know momentum's picking up and then he's getting better at kind of rotation separation, and that's really the ultimate goal in this program. That's the bread and butter, and it works. It works for speed, and it works for protecting the arm, because the arm has more time to go through its path, as opposed to getting caught in between and then not getting the energy and then having to overcompensate.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot easier on the arm if you can do it efficiently and get that power up the chain. Good question. Next question.
Ryan Maservi asks, "Hey Brent, is the push press beneficial for pitching velocity?"
I love this question because, most of baseball is scared of upper body extra lifts. And here's the thing with push press.
Specifically overhead.
Yeah, overhead. Here's the thing with the push press is that upper body lift, and you can support it a little bit with your legs, but you're still an upper body press. It's going to hit the deltoids really well. Mainly, there's shoulder capsules, which we need strength in, guys, because that's going to protect the rotator cuff. Coaches don't want us to do it because typically pitchers have weak shoulders. Why do we have weak shoulders? Because we throw a lot. Because if you look at the studies on who has the weakest shoulders on the team, it's the pitchers, because the pitchers throw more. Okay, so throwing weakens the arm. Doesn't allow you, because your arm's tired from throwing, doesn't allow you to build upper body strength. So here's the challenge, and that's why 3X pitching is a really good approach, because in off season, you need that time to build in the strength. You're gonna have a hard time building in strength if you're throwing every day or you're throwing so much. The thing is, we can throw 3 days a week. We can throw hundreds of throws 3 days a week and still feel healthy and fresh enough to go in and do heavy, slightly heavy upper body stuff. We don't get crazy. But if you're in a program that uses distance and uses a lot of mound work and uses weighted balls, good luck putting loads on your body. Your arm's not going to want it. Okay, that's what I did in developing this program. I came out of rotator cuff tear or rotator cuff surgery. I needed drills that reduced stress to my arm so I could build it up in the weight room, and I could build my legs up in the weight room. And that's why my drills focus around that balance, so we can then get in there and build the strength in our shoulders, which is going to protect our arms, make us healthier, and reduce it. Help prevent injury. It's key, guys. But the problem is, most guys are trying to do it in season, which is throwing too much, and in their off-season programs, they're throwing too much, so they can never do it. And then we have weak arms, and then we keep having injuries. And the thing is overhead pressing is fine if you're healthy, if your arm's not inflamed, and you have good scap function, and you know the technique. It's very healthy, and it's very important to you protecting your arms, guys. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I never would have guessed that pitchers had the weakest shoulders on the field, because you look at a guy that's throwing 95, how can that guy possibly have a weak shoulder? So I didn't know that till I came here, but it's true. Throwing weakens the shoulder. So you take guys that have weak shoulders, and instead of attacking that handicap and making the shoulder stronger in order to prevent injury, typically baseball will just say, okay, well, we're not going to touch that. Like, that's kind of an ass backwards way of thinking. My shoulder is weak, so I don't want to do overhead pressing because I'm afraid that my shoulder might pop out or something like that.
Or injured.
It's kind of ridiculous. My way of thinking, Brent's way of thinking, is our shoulders are weak. Let's attack it. Let's make them strong, because in the end, isn't that what you want to do?
Exactly.
If you have a weak ankle or whatever, like, you fix it. So when pitchers have weak shoulders and baseball says to not fix it because they're afraid of being injured, you're actually setting yourself up for more injury. That's what I don't understand. So it's incredibly important doing push press, anything overhead like that, because one, as a human, you should be able to do it with the range of motion and the strength and stuff like that. And while it's not commonplace in baseball to do like heavy Arnolds and stuff like that, I've heard stories like Tim Lincecum would walk from home plate and lap the bases on his hands walking around. That's a handstand. So that's
crazy
just an overhead press.
Yeah, it is.
It's the same thing. It's a normal human movement that all people should be able to do, and pitchers are people, so stop babying them.
Right, and here's the problem. It's the same in the bench press to overhead presses. The issues we can have is, and Bob had a little bit of this issue, if your end of range is right here, so if I hit end of range, like, it ain't going back anymore, look where the bar would be. It would be off my chest. So if I take a heavy bar and I go into my chest, now I just probably put that interior cuff into too much
pops forward
flexion.
Your shoulder pops forward because you're, okay, I'm out of range. Oh, okay, that's bad.
Right, so if you're that guy, you need to understand, okay, my range is stopping here. I need to go back up, or I need to block it and go back up until that gets better. Now, it will get better, but you don't want to take a kid who hasn't done that and just drop him, and then he strains his shoulder. That's what happens. Same thing is going to happen here. You don't want to take a kid, your range is probably going to be a little different here because you're not so far behind the back, but you might get tight right into here, so you trying to drop it all the way down could do that. So be careful of your ranges, but once you know your range, you can work from there and up in any position, and we'll build that strength. At the same time too, understand how the scaps work. If the scap is in this, if it's protracted and the clavicle's forward and we go up, boom, we can impinge, and that creates impingement pains and can cause actually tears and problems, but usually that happens with a baseball, not with a bar, but it can happen with a bar. And so if you understand that, you gotta learn how to retract your scap. When your arm goes up, you got to learn how to upwardly rotate. These are normal functions it should be doing, but if it's not, you need to support that and then hopefully get your scap stronger, which is trap development, upper, lower, and serratus development here. All should be built into your strength conditioning program, but this is all important. I think baseball is the only sport that wants to handicap. It's the only sport I know. It's like, well, typically pitchers are weak and injured here, let's do nothing about it. Pitchers are weak and injured here, let's do nothing about it, and don't let them ever come near the subject. It's like, what other sport does that? Yeah. And we still have some of the highest injury rates. We have patterns of injury, so it's not like it's working either, right?
Yeah. No, I've made this comparison to Brent a couple of times. I'm not sure the injury rate in basketball and things like that, but I have to imagine that knees and ankles are probably pretty shot from running and jumping on a hard surface, all that stuff. So it'd be like in basketball, be like, okay guys, all of your knees are really weak, so we're not gonna have you squat or do any leg work ever. And then you go out and you play the Cavaliers and you're expected to cover LeBron, and the first time you jump, you dislocate your kneecap or you tear your Achilles or something. Why? Because you're weak as hell. Like, you haven't prepared for that moment. It's the same thing. Pitchers have weak shoulders, and yet you're not going to do any shoulders and just hope, fingers crossed, it's going to hold together. And then when you're trying to throw as hard as you can, it doesn't make sense.
And then the strength coach gets fired because he made you do a one-legged, deadlift with a kettlebell because someone gets blamed, right? It's ridiculous. So unfortunately, baseball is ignorant of this. They're very ignorant of this, and they don't know how to address the subject because they've been positioned so hard here, and they're realizing the new position with the science and what we're learning is to completely change the position. I think it's just baseball slowly allowing this to happen, unfortunately. So. All right, good question. If you have another question, go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, @TopVelocity, #PitchTips, ask your question, we answer the show. Don't forget about 3X Velocity Camps. Going to get busy here this summer, so get booked for those 3X Velocity Camps, and we'll see you on the next episode.